Okay, welcome to our third monthly talk. We're excited that you're joining us, and in keeping with our theme, we have selected an unknown holiday today to host this talk. It's my husband's birthday, so I'm going to wear this birthday crown for just a few seconds here while we talk. Since we did our first talk on St. Patrick's Day and our second one on Cinco de Mayo, I thought it was appropriate. Unfortunately, July 4th is not our next talk, but maybe I'll wear something patriotic anyway. So just some update on harvest share activities. Our little seedling event ended up being a transfer of about 1,200 plants. We had 30 or 40 people, probably more like 40 people that donated seedlings, and didn't donate like one or two seedlings, but were dropping off 10, 15, 20 beautiful, beautiful plants. We had several plant sales in the area that gave us their several hundred remnants, which were also beautiful plants. And in turn, we shared those with growers who we asked to donate a little bit of their produce for the summer back to us. We also got to donate plants to some community groups, to the White Oak Youth Garden, to a group of young gardeners that are part of the Street Outreach Network in Montgomery County, to Plantita Power. We also donated, about 80 plants there to Hope Farm, a tree nursery for Montgomery County, who is planting a plot to grow to donate. So that's very exciting. So a huge thank you to anybody that participated in any way, whether you staff the event or grew plants. That's what Harvest Share is about. So it was absolutely wonderful. I'd like to say that we are already having community garden collections come in. It's exciting too. Bradley Park was the first one to officially log in greens that they collected and distributed. And I know Briggs Cheney has an event this weekend. So that's fantastic, given that we didn't plan on even bringing things in until July, but also has us scrambling to find homes for all this great produce. So if you are a site collection host, if you plan on receiving produce at your home this summer and you got a survey from Dara, please complete that. We're just trying to work out the logistics of collection. I know it's still another month off, but we really need that information to be able to move forward. So I think that wraps it up, unless somebody else has some comments. And we'll let Dara introduce our speaker for this evening.
Thanks, Kat. I know I was astounded with how many seedlings came through and were rehomed, whether they ended up in community gardens or in people's backyards, and it was really amazing to see. So I personally was just touched by how many plants we were able to keep out of the compost. It's great. I will go ahead and introduce Pat. Let me start by saying Pat is great. Every time I have a conversation with Pat, I learn something new. And so hopefully you will learn a lot, and I'm sure I will learn some things from this talk. But Pat's actual bio, besides my notes on Pat's greatness, Pat has been a veggie gardener for more years than she wants to count, and has been chasing various veggie garden pests for a long time. She became a master gardener in 2008 and has been working on her pest ID and control skills ever since. In 2012, Pat became the coordinator of the Montgomery Park's fledgling community gardens program. And this part-time retirement job provided even more opportunities to continue her personal goal of identifying and organically managing pest problems in veggie gardens. Today, she's a volunteer in one of the MC Park's community gardens and shares her experience with her fellow gardeners. Before I turn it over to Pat, if you have questions during the talk, please put them into the chat, and we will either I will answer them or we will collate them for Pat to answer at the as appropriate. Okay, Pat, it's all you.
Thank you for that great introduction. Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm have been a big fan of the Harvest Share program, and I hope that this talk will help with yields and your confidence with handling pests. I know some of you are quite experienced gardeners, so this may be more of a review for you than new information, but I learned a few things while I was bringing this talk to life, I hope. So questions are welcome, and let's get started. First of all, this is Dara's title. I love it. To squish or not to squish. I have found historically that many people are really reluctant to squish bugs. I gotta say, you gotta get over it, because once you start, it's really, really satisfying. One of the community garden volunteers when I worked for Parks used to tell the other gardeners at orientation, whatever you do, if Pat comes in near your plot, invite her over, because she will stand next to your plot and squish pests while you talk. And I realized he was right. So on that note, let's get started. First, I would like to thank John Tronfeld, who's the director of the Home and Garden Information Center at the University of Maryland Extension. Much of this talk was originally his, and it has been adapted over the years, but John has taught me so much about how to identify pests and how to be more confident about it, that I just want to applaud the work he does, first at the Grow It, Eat It program, and then the support that he provides to the master gardeners and community gardeners through the Home and Garden Information Center. Okay. And to start off, I am talking about some pest problems. They're also known as biotic problems. We're going to focus on pests. There are diseases are considered biotic problems, but if you're experiencing issues in your vegetable garden, it's important to remember that it isn't just pests and disease that can cause you difficulty with your plants and yielding and the yield, because sometimes it's a question of the pH, sometimes it's not enough fertilizer, sometimes it's too much fertilizer, sometimes it's extended high temperatures that cause plants not to produce. So there are a lot of things to take into account. So being a good vegetable gardener, I think, is a lot like being a detective. You start to eliminate certain things, and then you follow the path that seems to make the most sense. This is a list of some of the pests that I'm going to talk about tonight. They are clearly not all of the pests you may encounter in your vegetable garden, but if we did that, I'd be talking for way too long. So we're going to cover some of these, and if you have other questions, we can try to answer those, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, everybody ready? So what we were taught and what smart people everywhere follow is something called the integrated pest management approach. One of my fellow master gardeners coined the term the intelligent person's method. And I think this is, so be an intelligent person, and this is how you want to approach the problem. You're in the garden. The first thing is not the list of what you have to do or any of those things. It's to spend some time looking at your garden area and looking closely at your plants. So examining both sides of plant leaves and stems. Many pests you are going to find on the underside of the leaves. So if you don't look, you're not going to know they're there. So they can sneak up on you otherwise. We're going to talk a little bit about the physical and biological controls. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you can do to prevent pest problems. Then we're going to look at some of the less toxic alternatives, as well as a variety of pesticides. what we're really hoping, what I'm really hoping is that the first question is not, what do I put on this? What do I spray? But to look at some of these other methods, okay? And there we go. All right. Physical controls. This means barriers to prevent the pests from getting at your precious vegetables. These are two kind of examples. This is a floating row cover that is, the first picture shows it draped over what is a lettuce crop, and it helps to keep the pests on the outside while allowing sunlight and water to penetrate for your plants, which they obviously need. It helps it early in the season and sometimes later in the season. And one of the things to remember is you have plants that flower that need to be pollinated, and then the cover crop needs to be removed so that the plants can be pollinated. There was something else I was going to say about that, but it's gone. The other picture is of a low tunnel with a row cover over it. That gives you a space where the plants can get taller. Your lettuce, you don't have to worry about it outgrowing a row cover. Some of your other plants really need room to grow, so you need to allow for that. So there are a number of different ways to use the row covers. I've learned a few things the hard way with my row covers, and it's important to know that they come in different weights. So that means that there are lightweight ones that are used to repel pests. As I said, they let in the most light and also let in water. There are heavier weights that you can use early in the spring or in the fall for planting. My favorite place to go for an explanation of some of this is the Johnny Seed catalog, where they explain to you that the light row covers, they call them AG 15, and the heavier ones are AG 19. And then there are even heavier ones, and they tell you what temperature they'll keep the plants warm till and things like that. But there's this thing about the row covers. You grow seedlings at home maybe, or you plant seeds, not such a problem. But if you're buying your seedlings, it is really important that if you're going to use a row cover, that you look very carefully at the seedlings before you put them into a space with a row cover. Because if there are pests already on those plants, what you have done is given them an incredibly wonderful environment, and none of the other pests or predatory insects can get to them, and they are just going to thrive in there and not do what they're supposed to do. So your row cover is really important, but making sure you're not putting a row cover over seedlings that have pests on them already. That means, and I have learned this the hard way. I once planted eggplant in my backyard in a pot, and I didn't have, my husband kept saying to me, well, how can they possibly know that it's out here? And I did what was the right thing, put the row cover on. The next morning, literally the row cover was covered with the pest known as flea beetles. So you want to plant and cover. You don't want to wait a week. You don't want to wait 2 weeks. You want to make sure, and if by some chance that you have to wait, you need to do a very, very thorough inspection before a row cover goes on. But the best is have your seedling in one hand and your row cover ready to go at the same time. I was just talking about row covers, and here's an example. I spoke about the flea beetles. People tell me something is eating my eggplant, and I almost always now, after all these years, don't even have to go look. I said, is it these little teeny weeny holes that make it look kind of like a little lacy thing? Yep, that's what it is. It's a flea beetle. The first picture is a quite enlarged picture of a flea beetle, so you can get a good look at them. this picture here is actually of some dust that's been applied, and you can still see the flea beetles. This picture here is life size of flea beetles, hence you can see the thumb, and these guys are fast. One of the things I'll talk about later is squishing bugs. These guys are so quick, and slightest disturbance, they're gone. So that makes the row cover really one of the best ways to approach this. And if you have your row cover on, you of course are going to have this fabulous looking, wonderful crop of beautiful eggplant that you can enjoy instead of a poor dead plant. Because the flea beetles, especially on seedlings, will do so much damage that the plant can't survive. You'll need to take the row cover off when the flowers start to appear. But the good news is most of the eggplants by then have gotten large enough so that they can withstand some of the damage that the flea beetles may cause later. But the little seedlings don't stand a chance. They just don't have enough plant to support themselves. So early and quick. And I showed you the row cover. There are also other ways to do this. This is me because I don't grow that many eggplant. So this is an example of making do with actually a vegetable trellis. It's like a open thing, and I've placed the row cover on top of it, and you'll notice I've put clothespins on it, and you'll see that there are rocks around the bottom to prevent anything from getting in underneath. You can water through the row cover, or sometimes I set it up so it has kind of a flap, and I will take one of the clothespins off and can water there, and also take a look at how things are doing and check on whether the plant has started to bloom yet. So that's so you don't have to do a whole low tunnel in order to use the row covers. But you want to make sure that there is space between the plant and the row cover, because there are certainly some insects that have sucking mouth parts and can just land on your row cover, and with a fruit or or leaves close by, they can just penetrate the row cover and right into your plant. So you want to make sure you have enough space for the plant to grow and to prevent close contact by whatever pest you're trying to prevent. You'll hear me say row cover over and over and over again till you're sick of me and row covers. Lots of people are reluctant to do it, but they're great sources of information. They are not hard to do. I have seen beginners construct one in a half hour once they've gotten all the materials. So it's not a daunting engineering process. So you can do it, I promise. Okay, next topic is the biological controls. These are other insects that are considered predatory. In our house, we say everything eats something. It's not entirely true, but mostly true. By having these beneficial insects and leaving them alone to do their job, they are helping you, the gardener, to get rid of pests. So on this slide, this picture here is a lovely green lacewing larva chowing down on, I'm not sure what exactly. The larval forms of most of these insects, their only job is to eat and grow up. So they are voracious feeders on other pests. And when you see one, you leave it alone. And my general rule is if I don't know what it is, I leave it alone till I can go check. This slide is actually an adult lacewing. It's a brown lacewing. This one's job really is to make more lacewings. So this nice fat larva is going to grow up into an adult, going to find the love of his or her life and make babies and help you with your garden. So you really, really want to leave them alone. And there are a lot of them. I'm only going to show you a sample, but it's estimated that about 1 million insect species, bugs, have been identified, and only about 1% of them are actually considered pests. The rest of them are either helpers, or they're just minding their own business and they're not bothering your plants. And entomologists say there may be as many as at least another million, and that's what I wrote it down because I knew I wasn't going to remember, that there may be 10 times as many insect species that have yet to be identified. So one of our jobs is to make sure that the predators and the beneficials survive. Okay, here are a couple of examples. I know, oh, ick, spiders. Spiders are great. This is a mom spider, and she's trapping food, and she's going after the pests that you want to get rid of, and doing a great job of it. If you can just leave her alone and leave and not get too tangled up in webs. This here is a ladybird beetle larva, also commonly known as a ladybug. Again, these guys, their job is to get bigger and make more ladybugs. And so if you see the ladybug or ladybird larva in your garden, you have a huge friend. And they, again, that larval stage, voracious eaters, and we want to have them stick around. I have not seen any. Dara said that she's got loads of them in her garden this year. So it's worth going out and taking a look at your plants and seeing if you can find any and identify those. This one is my personal favorite name for a predator. This is an assassin bug. Again, a great predator. It's looking for lunch, dinner, and all the time. So again, they look predatory in a way, don't you think? But if they're in your garden, you have, again, another friend. Now, this is the ick picture. This is a tomato hornworm. They are found, you'll be surprised to learn, often on tomatoes and some of the plants in the tomato family called nightshades. And this guy that we're looking at is actually a goner. These are the eggs of a parasitic wasp that mom inserts her eggs into the body of the hornworm, and as they grow, they create these little capsules, and they make their way out. So if you are, and the tomato hormones are really hard to find, even when you know they're there, they blend in just really, really well with tomato plants. But if you see these little white things on the top, this is not a hornworm that you need to worry about. You don't need to kill it. It's on its way out. And you especially want to leave it alone to preserve these wonderful little wasps that are going to be around to catch the next generation of the hornworm. So if the hornworm and the attached wasp eggs are in an inconvenient place, you can relocate them. Mostly you just leave them be, and there will be a shriveled up skeleton, and that hornworm is history. So this is a really good sign. This is something that you want to be sure to foster and not get in the way of. Okay. There are a couple of other prevention strategies that are worth thinking about. In your home garden, you may have birdhouses, or my recollection is that we were never able to put any birdhouses in any of the community gardens back in the day for a variety of reasons. Birds and bats are great consumers of insects, but especially the birds can be a kind of a mixed blessing, because Some of them really want to go after insects. Some of them think your tomatoes are just the juiciest source of water they can find, and will often go after things like blueberries and strawberries. So they are prevention mechanisms, but in some cases, especially the birdhouses, are a bit of a mixed blessing. So it's really up to you to decide. I have a birdhouse in my home garden, and I don't see a lot of grubs. I don't see a lot of caterpillars. I don't see a lot of worms. And because the backyard also has water sources, and I don't grow blueberries or strawberries, then the birds are my friend, and they're fun to watch too. So, but that's a decision you have to make based on your own experience. The other thing that we want to do is to support the beneficial insects and obviously the pollinators. There's certainly lots more talk in the media and among gardeners these days about the importance of both the beneficial insects as well as the pollinators. So we want to provide sources of food for these guys so that they hang around in the garden. This is just a list of some sample plants that that you can plant. I don't believe you're a serious vegetable gardener unless you have flowers that go with your vegetables. Vegetables are important, yes, but they really need the beauty, first of all, of the flowers, as well as the support for the beneficials and for the pollinators. Last year, I got completely carried away and planted a row of zinnias around my sweet potatoes. I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention, and the zinnias turned out to be about 4 feet tall and surrounded the but the gardeners at my community garden were just thrilled because the first thing they saw was this beautiful abundance of flowers. We had so many that it became a cutting garden for the gardeners. So that's really something to think about. Enjoy the beauty of the flowers as well as their support for the insects and for the pollinators. I would just have a little. Mountain mint is a native plant. It's not as aggressive as the other mints, but it can still take off on you. So if you're in a community garden, I'd say, yeah, put it in a pot. And the other one are some of the milkweeds. You need to look carefully at the milkweeds because some of them have a will to conquer the earth. And while you want to support the provide food for those wonderful monarchs, you also want to have room for your vegetables. So certain kinds of the milkweed, which I don't remember, I think it's the swamp milkweeds that are not so aggressive, but some of the others can be quite aggressive. So it's important to think about that as you're selecting what kind of flowers you might like to plant. Okay, prevention. Those of you who are community gardeners, back from my time, and you had me jumping all over the place about getting diseased plants and debris out of the garden. Here's the reason. When you have diseased plants and debris, you provide great homes for insect pests and slugs. So if you have diseased plants during the growing season, get them out of there as fast as you can. It's usually best if you have the ability to hot compost them, you can do that for most of them. Otherwise, they need to be sealed up and be treated as garbage, as refuse. If you stick them on a plant debris or a compost pile, all they're going to do is reproduce and head right back to where you just got them out of. So you want during the season to remove diseased plants and debris, and at the end of the season, you want to do the same thing. I really noticed this year in the media and on Facebook, lots and lots of people talking about, leave hiding places for the beneficials. They mean any place but your vegetable garden, okay? Because in the vegetable garden, they are just asking for more pests. And and problems in your next growing season. After a while, you learn to know when the peak growing season, the peak, tongue-tied here, when the peak insect infestations occur. And the strategies for that are things like to plant earlier than they peak, to plant later, or to plant multiple times. We'll talk about cucumbers and squash a little bit later. Some of those you can do multiple plantings. Don't plant all your cucumbers at once. Plant a few, wait a couple of weeks, plant some more, so that you get some cucumbers. First of all, you don't get them all at once unless you're, in a mad pickling phase. So you spread out the production, and you also beat out some of the pests. You will get cucumbers, for example, before they are overtaken by pests or by disease. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And you can see I got really excited, and here it is again, clear out those dead plants. The other strategy is to consider planting a cover crop in the fall to enrich your soil and also protect it, so that your soil is healthy and there is less chance of the recurring pest problems. Okay. Now let's talk about pesticides, everybody's favorite topic. Not really. Okay. It's important when you are considering using pesticides, especially in vegetable gardens, to concentrate on using organic products. And there are two good ways to identify the kinds of things that you might want to use. Many products are labeled for organic gardening specifically. You need to look for that on the label. So bring your glasses to the nursery or to the big box store so you can look at the tiny print on those bottles. But you're looking for organic gardening, or labeled as OMRI listed. OMRI stands for the Organic Materials Research Institute. And what companies do is they submit their product to this group for listing as organic compatible pesticides. Okay, so you want to see either organic gardening or OMRI listed. That's the best way to go about looking at that. These products may be less toxic than other pesticides, but remember, they are pesticides and can cause harm. You can get into trouble by using the wrong pesticide for a particular pest, and also by not following the label directions. It is actually a federal law that you have to read and follow the directions on pesticide labels. And I have to admit, they don't make it easy, especially for those of us who have a fading sharpness of vision, but it is your job to read those and know what you're buying. And please note that organic, natural, and safe don't necessarily mean the same things. Natural actually doesn't, in the labeling business, doesn't mean anything at all. So again, you want to be a very thoughtful consumer here, because you're growing food for you and your family and possibly other people to eat. You'll see, and we'll talk about things like insecticidal soap, neem oil, spinosad, horticultural oil, BT, which is actually a bacillus that can be used on to treat some pest problems. Okay, I'm going to say this again. Read and follow all label directions. If it says wear a mask, wear a mask. If you should be in long pants or wear gloves, those directions are there to keep you safe. Please, please, please make sure that you follow those label directions. Now, we used to have wonderful pesticides that killed all the bugs. at least we thought they were wonderful at the time. We've learned better since then. So one of the reasons for this talk is to help you identify pests, because what you choose to do really depends on the pest that's causing the problem. And among the organic and other pesticides, some of them work only if you actually can spray the bug directly. You can spray the leaves till the end of time and you won't have any effect on some of those insects because they need direct contact with the substance that you're spraying. Some will only work on one stage of development. For example, some of them only work on young caterpillars. By the time they get to be adults, that particular pesticide may not work at all. So and one product seldom fits all of the pests. Again, to stress, if it says wear protective clothing, wear protective clothing. If it says don't use this near water, you don't use it near water. Those directions are really, really important. So if that sounded like a lecture, yeah, it is. Please take care of yourselves and your whole ecosystem. Because really, when you think about it, your vegetable garden is a whole ecosystem that's part of a larger one. So you want to have the best results for your vegetable garden with the least bad impact on your ecosystem and the surrounding ones. Now, you'll laugh, but I got a number when I started to prepare for this talk. I had a number of folks who had special requests, shall we say. Could I please talk about Colorado potato beetles? Could I talk about harlequin bugs? So there are a couple of here that are on other people's top 10 parade. So this is a Colorado potato beetle. And yes, it is a hint. You will find it on potatoes, but you will also find it on similar vegetables, such as some of the nightshade vegetables. They don't stick strictly to Colorado, nor do they stick strictly to potatoes. And if you'll notice, this is the underside of a leaf that we're looking at. If you are looking at the top of your potato leaves, you're not going to see this one. And if you need gloves, if you need double gloving, when you see these guys, squish. And in this case, squishing is your best bet, especially those eggs, because there can be multi-generations of the Colorado potato beetles in a season. So, okay, so your job, first of all, you've gone to your garden plot, you've planted potatoes, you want to go look. So look at the leaf undersides, and you saw what the egg masses look like. They're that nice orangey color, and you've got that striped beetle, which may or may not be present. They don't hang around to make sure the young do well. So, and check all of your nightshade plants, which would include tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and there are probably a couple more that I'm not thinking of. Again, hand pick or crush those eggs. Here, you've probably planted your potatoes already. So this is a note to self. Next year, if you start to discover that you're having potato beetles this year, you want to consider using row covers to plant these guys next year. You leave the row cover on for the whole season. Pollination is not needed for the potatoes, so you're good to go. The other thing is crop rotation. And in small gardens, this is a tough one. I appreciate that. But wherever possible, you want to do some crop rotation. And that isn't just the potatoes, that's the other nightshade vegetables. So it's, as I said, in small gardens, it can be helpful. And sometimes you may need to take a year off, grow something else instead. Let somebody else grow the potatoes. Make a deal. You grow the potatoes in your plot, and I'll grow something that you want that isn't so affected if the infestation tends to be bad. Now, I've given some examples here of some of the things of the things that you can use on the potato beetle. Just a couple of shared experiences. The Cowlin clay is kind of, it's the consistency of flour, you can buy it in a variety of stores, and you can get it online. The trick with it is it needs to be put in a bucket with water, stirred up, and really gotten, fully absorbed in the water. Then it goes into a sprayer, and then you have to spray the top of the leaves and the undersides of the leaves. If you don't get the undersides of the leaves, it's not going to work. And you have to keep shaking it up because it's clay, so it gunks up the applicator. And I have not tried it, but I have heard from a number of folks that it's really clunky to use and something of a problem. The pyrethmins, here is an example of or an organic pesticide that comes from chrysanthemum flowers. And it's listed as organic because and how bad could something that comes from chrysanthemum flowers be? Well, it can be. It is one that I would urge you to do some research and only go to if there are really no other workable options. The pyrethrins and pyrethroids and permethins are should not be sprayed anywhere near water. They have a toxic effect on honeybees and things like that. So while it is listed as an organic, it has issues that we should all be cautious about. And spinosad, another general one that works quite well. It comes either as a spray or dust, depending on what kind of pest you're dealing with. I think I need to get moving. For those of you who have cabbage and anything in the cabbage family, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, I'm leaving something out. You have probably seen the cabbage worm butterfly. This is not your friend. Because what this lovely butterfly does is it likes to lay eggs that grow into what are known as the imported cabbage worm. So here's a picture of the cabbage worm, and that is the cabbage worm's poop, because it's been eating leaves in your cabbages or other similar vegetables. In real life, they look about that big, and you see those nasty little holes. Yeah, that's them. Again, squish, squish, squish. But again, she's going to say it, floating row covers, remove plant debris, handpick the larvae. BT works, but only on the younger caterpillars. So how much time do you have standing out there looking at the underside of your cabbage leaves, trying to figure out how old that baby caterpillar is? Yeah, not good. Hand picking is probably your best bet, but note to self again, if you are planting cabbages, row cover, row cover, row cover. And there are enough, this is just one example of the caterpillars that will attack things in the cabbage family. So, and again, here you'll see some of the, some of the possible things. And again, the warning about the pyrethrum. And here again, recommendation is the pollen-rich flowers that you saw the list of early on are a great way to attract predators, and birds also. They don't usually feed their young seeds. They're usually feeding the baby caterpillars. So this is at a time when the birdhouse is your friend. Okay. Yeah, nothing works for everything is the sad part of this. Okay, and yeah, this is the harlequin bug and its life stage. This is a true bug, and so it goes through complete metamorphosis. I think I'm saying that right. Any of the other master gardeners who remember differently, oh, please pipe in with the in the comments so we can fix my boo-boos. These are really gorgeous bugs. I mean, you got to admit they are showy, showy, showy. And what do harlequins go after? Okay, well, they also go after all of those things in the cabbage family. So if you are at home and are able to do hot composting, you can hot compost the crop residue immediately after they're finished. Don't leave them hanging around. Not a good idea. Again, you're looking to search out and crush eggs. Is this beginning to sound repetitive? Yeah. Floating row cover, transplant to harvest. They don't, your cabbages, as I said before, don't need to be pollinated. So you need to check on them because sometimes the harlequins are really sneaky and find a way if you haven't anchored down that row cover tightly enough to keep them out. Again, here's, you can spray the nymphs, but here the spray has to contact the bugs. That's not easy to do. So that's why some of the other organic managements are more highly recommended. One of the things that about the harlequin bugs is they get to be a community pest because you can pretty much grow things in this family starting early in the spring and well into the fall. So, and it means that if they're not treated, especially if you're in a community garden, if they're not treated and dealt with in one person's plot, they become everybody's problem because, oh, they've decimated your crop. They're not retiring or going to, Cape Cod for the rest of the summer. They're going to the next plot where there are the sources of food that they're looking for, i.e. cabbage, broccoli, all of those kinds of things. So especially if you're a community gardener, it is really incumbent upon you to take care of this kind of a pest as soon as you realize it's happening. I did a little work at Red Wiggler Farm a few years ago, and they actually declared a brassica free year. They didn't plant any brassicas anywhere on the farm to try to get the population under control. That's how bad it can be. So think of saving your crop, but also think about the effect it is likely to have on your neighbors. Okay. Okay, the cucumbers, they come in different stripes and spots. You can see pictures here, both the striped cucumber beetle and the spotted cucumber beetle. And you can see the kind of damage that they do, these nasty holes and brown spots in the leaves of your cucumber. Here's more examples. Not only do they go after the leaves, they like to hang out and make a mess of your beautiful cucumbers, and they will also hang out with some of your flowers. Okay. But as bad as this is, there's something worse that happens with the I think it's primarily with the spotted cucumber beetle, but in a way it almost doesn't matter. This is an example of a bacterial wilt on a cucumber. And this is particularly nasty because I don't know why it wants to go there, but if you're seeing this, I'm go away. Okay, the cucumber beetles poop on the plants as well as eating holes in them. And the bacteria is located, and I'm not going to try to remember or say its Latin name. The bacteria is located in the feces, that's also known as frass or poop, on the leaves. And where there are wounds on the leaves, the bacteria has a way to enter into your cucumber plant, and it will look like this, and it will look worse. And then one day you'll come in and it's just dead. When you start to see cucumber wilt like this, you've got a serious problem, and this plant is gonna die. I hate to say that, but yeah. So these particular ones are hard to hand pick. Again, floating row cover. And the here things like spinosad, that I have personally found that what's the dust, the spinosad dust on the cucumber leaves works really well. But if you are seeing lots of these beetles, as well as the signs of bacterial wilt, you want to get those plants out of the garden as fast as you can and into a sealed plastic bag, because this plant is not going to recover. So and keeping it there just means that the cucumber beetles have more opportunity to infest others of your plants as well as your neighbors. This is where I said succession planting is a really helpful thing. You plant late, you plant multiple crops, or I like to plant cucumbers as succession. So I'll plant a couple, I'll wait a couple of weeks, I'll plant some more, and I'll get a couple of cucumbers off the first one before it comes to the bacterial wilt. I'll pull that out. The next ones will be maturing, and I'll get a couple of cucumbers that way. You can, if you're growing from seed, especially, you can go online and look for cucumbers that are resistant to the cucumber wilt and the mosaic virus. The other thing you can do is take a year off. I had a terrible time with the bacterial wilt last year. I am not planting cucumbers this year. I am saying, I'm going to support the farmer's market or take advantage of my neighbors if somebody wants to give up a cucumber or two. But just to break the cycle, sometimes just leaving out a particular crop is a good way to break the cycle and prevent doing it again, a worse recurrence. Squash bugs. Well, yeah. Many years I skipped planting zucchini because the squash bugs beat me every single time. Here's a picture of an adult squash bug, and where'd my pointer go? And what the kind of damage that you're seeing. Let's look more closely. Here are the squash bug eggs, and they are hard as a rock little pellets. They are often hard to crush. So sometimes the thing to do is actually preemptively punch a hole here and grab them and put them in a plastic bag or into soapy water. These guys, these nymph things, are about the quickest thing I have ever seen. You really want to get these guys when you're seeing eggs, because trying to track these down, they go in every direction just as fast as all those little legs will carry them, and they are really hard to deal with as immatures. So here, get to the eggs. For those of you who listened to Terry's talk, I understand that she talked about pests of squash a little bit. So if this is a repeat, I apologize. I hope that it's just reinforcement that these are bugs you really need to deal with. So again, one of the other strategies I'm not going to repeat all the things I've just said over and over again. One of the strategies that I, in fact, have not tried is placing the wooden boards next to the plants, because apparently the nymphs or adults like to hide under boards in the evening so that they don't become somebody else's dinner. And the best way to get them is in the morning. Well, I never got to the community garden. I don't get to the community garden first thing in the morning. So this isn't one that works particularly well for me, but if you're an early bird and are out in the backyard, you might want to try the wooden boards. Or if you're an early bird and get to the community garden early, then this might be a strategy that you might want to try. Again, here you're going to need to take the row cover off when the squash plants, whether it's zucchini or any of the other squash, when the flowers start to bloom, because they need to be pollinated. Two other strategies that are slightly different is, instead of planting these guys early, wait till mid or even a little later in June, because the squash bugs peak is earlier. And so you sometimes will miss. The other thing is that you can plant a trap crop. And trap crops are sort of interesting because they are designed really to attract the pests that you're looking for. So what you're doing is planting squash to get squash bugs. It sounds a little crazy. And the mistake I've seen people make over and over again with these is that they are that they forget to take the trap crop out. And so what happens is they've got a trap crop full of squash bugs that they leave there, and the squash bugs just move to the real crop. So if you're considering a trap crop, again, do some research, but the idea is you're going to get those squash plants out of there and into the plastic bags and out of your garden, so that you have missed the peak of their feeding and reproductive times. Okay. All right. Okay, we're still on squash. Wilted squash looks a little peaked, doesn't it? Yeah, what could be causing this? Well, here's another nasty little pest. All right, this is the squash vine borer. Isn't she pretty? Look at that nice Halloween colors and those great spots. Well, what the female does is finds your nice squash plant, which tend to have kind of hollow leaves, and she gets down at the stem pretty close to the soil line, and she lays her eggs. And this is a larva, and its job is to eat its way out of the squash vine. And in the process of doing that, it stops water from getting to the rest of the plant. It's cut off the water supply to the rest of your plant, and also nutrients. And sadly, this takes a while to happen. And let me just go to the organic. Again, floating row covers. Some people have luck wrapping the stems with aluminum foil collars and checking regularly. I haven't found that to be particularly successful, but it is one of the general recommendations and worth a try. The other thing is you can cut the affected stem, remove or pierce the larva, and then tape it back up again. Again, if you've got the squash vine borer, destroy the affected plants, and do it early, not late. I can't tell you how many arguments I've had with gardeners who I can see that there's the frass and there's this mushy mess of what used to be a stem close to the soil, but 15 feet that away, it's still green. And they say, yeah, but it's still alive. It's not going to survive. So what you don't want to do is to give that larva the chance to grow up and be another squash vine borer. And so you do not compost plants that are affected by squash vine borer. And here again, You practice crop rotation because the pupa overwinter in the soil. So guess what? When it comes to be the time for you to be planting your squash, they're thinking to themselves, time to get out and see the world and make baby squash vine borers. So those are some ways to deal with the squash vine borer. Okay, Mexican bean beetle. These are the bane of my existence. And I don't quite understand why, because they're relatively easy to spot. First of all, take a look at this. They're not ladybugs. They're not like a chef who was protecting them like crazy in one of the garden plots years ago because he thought he had a ladybug. No, he had a Mexican bean beetle, and they go after things in the bean family, but your string beans and a bunch of those, man, they just go crazy. And you can see the kind of damage they do. This is a picture of their bright yellow larva. It's guess what the solution is. Oh, I forgot. And this is them making babies. Ay. Okay, squish, squish, squish. You can squish the adults, you can squish the larvae, you can squish the eggs. The eggs are also yellow and they tend to be on the underside, and they squish very satisfactorily. So if you want to get even, this is a way to do it. They don't move nearly as quickly as some of the squash bugs. Again, surprise, row cover. Oh, gee, clean up. And here again, remove the infested plants. Do not compost or add to garden debris piles. It is, and here again, the heads up about the kaolin clay or the pyrethrins, but you can, the row cover works really well. And if you choose not to do that, or you've planted pole beans, which are kind of hard to row cover, the week after you plant them, start looking for Mexican bean beetles. I don't know why they're called Mexican bean beetles any more than the Colorado potato beetles, but that's what they're called. If you're not sure, take a picture of one of the adults and check it against, some sources, because if it's on, if it's on green beans or other kinds of beans, the chances are really, really good it's a Mexican bean beetle. And I think we are getting close to the end. I've gone a little slower than I thought, or tried to cover too much. This is an example of a pest that we had in great quantity that caused a lot of angst a few years ago. It's the brown marmorated stink bug. Here's a picture of the adult. You can see it has some things in common, especially if you don't get a close look with the squash bug. These are their cute little eggs. This is your friendly neighborhood grasshopper, and this is the kind of damage that they do. There are actually lots of different kinds of stink bugs. I don't have time to go into them all, but it's important to know, first of all, if you squish them with your fingers, you're going to be able to tell. I don't think they stink that badly. I think actually, to me, they smell like cilantro, but never mind. You may feel differently. So again, here they are: beans, corn, tomatoes, peas, peppers, squash, row covers, search for the egg masses. These guys they tend to drop, and they're not the only insects that do this, that if they're disturbed, they drop off, so that if you get near them, you can have a container with soapy water in it, and put it under them as you start to look for them. If they drop into the soapy water, they're goners. There's also a way to use like a larger soda bottle where you cut the top off, turn the top part, the opening up at the top, turn it inside out. Turn it upside down, not inside out, that's too hard. Turn it upside down into the base and put soapy water in the bottom. It's hard for them to get out there. And again, you take advantage of their way of protecting themselves by dropping when they're disturbed. So that will often help. And you will be completely surprised to learn that cleaning up the plant debris helps to keep these populations under control. We don't normally recommend tilling in most cases these days, but if you have had a heavy infestation, you may want to do some tilling to expose any that are soil dwelling so that they are killed by the winter. Okay.
Pat, I had a quick interruption.
Sure.
So there's a question around, and we've been talking a lot about cleaning up debris, cleaning up plant debris. And so the question was around, well, then are you also removing the overwintering sites for beneficials? And so if you could speak to kind of what would you leave for beneficials versus what you want to clean away?
In my personal experience and in what I've read, you want your benefit. Okay. Okay. To me, you treat a vegetable garden differently than you would treat your other landscape because of the pest concentrations. And I mean, if you don't have any pests in your garden, you can do a light cleanup in your vegetable garden, but most of us are better off doing a full cleanup of your vegetable garden and putting down a cover crop, or to cover the soil with straw, leaves, or even plastic sometimes. That's not ever, that's my least favorite option, and the cover crop is my favorite one. For small gardens, I will say Botanical Interest has started putting out cover crop seeds in small quantities. I really like the field peas and winter oats as shelter for the beneficials, as well as for improvement and protection of your very, very precious soil. So other people may come down differently, but I use the surrounding landscaping as where I don't do the heavy cleanup in the vegetable garden. I found that that's usually the better strategy. So, but it's one of those things where people have preferences, and I would say if you think it's leaving stuff works, then you're probably not in a community garden, because in a community garden, you're really asking for trouble by not clearing plots and putting in a cover crop, or at least covering your protecting your plot with straw. So yeah, that do it.
I think that's helpful. I think, the one last note from my perspective is, especially things that have a lot of disease associated with them,
Right.
Like the tomatoes, the cucumbers, like you want to clear all that out. A lot of the diseases can remain in your soil for years. So you don't want to just leave rotting fruit and old plants. Right. So cleaning that out's helpful. I will leave certain things, like I tend to leave sunflower stalks because I think there are native bees and things that will nest in those. I don't have a lot of disease pressure there.
Yeah, perfect. And the sunflowers, that's a great point. Thank you. Okay, now wait a minute. Oh, stink bugs, is that where I was? Yeah, that's where I was. Sorry. Okay. When you grow your own vegetables, I think you learn to realize that perfect produce is not what you get most of the time. And for the stink bugs that have caused some problems, you will see a cloudy spot. You just cut that out. You can eat around it. It's not a problem. One of the adults stink bugs are highly resistant to most insecticides, and so you really want the soap soapy water solution, or you want to have gotten the eggs, or use the row cover. And it's important to pay attention to the fact that thick organic mulch provides a great habitat for stink bugs. So, mulching the plot for the winter, if you have stink bugs, can be a bad idea. So, okay, I think we are almost at the end. Normally, when people do talks, and here are the resources, and just zoom along. Sorry for the pun, but this list is short, and I would like to spend just a couple of minutes, and then let's get to questions. The Home and Garden Information Center is one of the best resources available to you in terms of all sorts of vegetable gardening questions, from how to do it to pests, diseases. You can take pictures, you can send pictures asking questions to them. They no longer have a toll-free number, so you don't get to talk to somebody, but you will get some great information. There's a blog that covers a number of different things, but the vegetable garden blog is often written by one of my favorite master gardeners, as well as vegetable experts who gardens up at the Germantown Garden. And she's the person who turned me on, and I will show you a picture of this. This is a brand new book, the Vegetable Garden Pest Handbook, came out in April of this year. And everybody I have showed it to or talked to about it, we all say, this is the book somebody should have written years ago. It is a really amazing resource. And if you are a book buyer or a book suggester for the library, this is a book you want to be acquainted with, I think. Now, one of the nice things about vegetable gardening is that most of the time we know what we planted. So your smartphone, or when you get home, is really a great resource. We used to have to tell people, oh, you need a lens to get a good look at this bug. Well, with your smartphone now, you can take a close-up picture of, as long as they're posing for you, of course. And the way to figure out what it is to do something as simple, search engine of your choice, enter pest or pest of or disease of the name of the plant. So pest of eggplant. You will get information as well as pictures of what is likely to be the pest that affects your eggplant. You scan the pictures, and every time I've done this, there's what I'm looking for. So that's a really quick way. And unlike the gazillion types of trees and shrubs, and I never remember the names of those, I'm really close friends with my vegetable plants. I know their names, or I've left the tag so I can look it up. And that's really helpful. That's an easy way to get some quick information about, is this a pest or is it a beneficial? If it's not on the pest list, leave it alone. Okay. A couple of other handy things to have. Is Mac's Field Guide is actually a one-page laminated field guide. So you can stick it in your garden bag, stick it in the car, put it by the kitchen door. And on one side, it's got good bugs, and on the other side, it's got bad bugs. And on the bad bug side, in teeny weeny print at the bottom, it actually lists what the bad bugs, what their favorite food might be. So that's a nice, easy one. It's still in print. I checked on Amazon before I put it here, and it's a helpful resource to have and easy to transport. Another easy to transport one is the Good Bug, Bad Bug. And this is a little maybe 4x5 size, 4x6 size spiral bound field guide with laminated paper, so you your dirty fingers don't screw up the print. Also portable, easy, and she gives you a description, the crops, as well as organic controls. And I mentioned you're using your smartphone to figure these things out. The other thing, I am not a big user of the apps. I'm old, sorry, I'm not keeping up. But I know many people who swear by things like iNaturalist. Picture This is another one that many of the master gardeners really like a lot. It's $29.99 a year, so it's not cheap, but everything I've heard about it is really good. So let me, and thank you for listening. And I'm looking forward to chat with everybody. And I'm going to put this up on the screen. This is the book I was just talking about, the Vegetable Garden Pest Handbook by Susan Mulvihill. I don't remember off the top of my head the price, but as far as I was concerned, it was worth every penny. $26.99 US. Great pictures, lots of different ways of looking things up, profiles of the pest. There's a very, very nice section talking about the pros and cons of the various organic pesticides, as well as kind of a do-it-yourself section on how to do a row cover and all sorts of good stuff. So I'm done.
Thank you, Pat. That was fantastic. Oh, and it looks like it's 21 on Amazon. A couple people posted in the chat. It's a few dollars cheaper.
Well, that's where I got it, but I'm giving you list price.
Yeah, list price. Great. We have a couple questions that came up in the chat. If people have other questions, things that weren't covered in the talk, now is the time to throw them into the chat so we can get them answered for you. There's a question about a local source for kaolin clay. I've only ever found it online. Do you know of anywhere local?
I do not. Online is where, because it's used more often in agriculture than in gardening, I think. So it's an online thing. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that was my experience too. And it is sort of the enemy of sprayers everywhere because it's known for clogging them. You mentioned that, but it is a great product. Another question was around diatomaceous earth, which you didn't really go into, and if that's something that you recommend and for what pests.
Yeah. Okay. This is one of the, why do I have this book? Because yeah, diatomaceous earth. Well, it's ground up. What is it ground up? It's ground
Diatoms.
up. Diatoms. And it is a I'm surprised it actually didn't, I didn't realize it didn't end up on any of the and the list of recommendations. It is, you can use it to create a barrier that doesn't allow the pest to cross the barrier. Again, this is, it's safe because most garden centers sell a food grade. I'm not sure why you want to eat diatoms, but whatever. It can be used in a couple of different ways. The main thing about it is that they are silica essentially, which means that you do not want this in your lungs. So diatomaceous is a great tool, but you need to go back to read and follow the directions. So I don't remember off the top of my head which pests it's good at. So I'm afraid you'll have to look that one up. Off the top of my head, I don't remember.
That's totally fair. I've only really used it for creepy crawly ones. It's supposed to be lacerating to them.
Yeah, they don't like the bugs that are walking on the leaves don't like to touch it. Okay. It hurts their feet or whatever that thing is called in insects.
Got it. Let's see, are there any others? There's one last one around the different ladybird beetles and their lookalikes. You mentioned the Mexican bean beetle. Are there other ones, and how do you distinguish them?
Well, the part of it is I start by what plant I'm looking at. Because yeah. In real life, I haven't found them that hard to tell apart. The Mexican bean beetles tend to be a yellowy oranger color. There's variety in the ladybird beetles, and there are 2-spotted ones and multi-spotted ones. It's actually worth spending, using your computer and spending some time looking at pictures and comparing them, to kind of get your eye used to looking for them. 99 times out of 100, if it's on a bean plant, it's a Mexican bean beetle.
That's fair. I think host plant's a great way to start. I was noticing on that picture you showed, the larva looks so different. So as long as you think about the life cycle, that would help you too.
Yeah, and because because of the infestations and the way that they hatch, the larvae are bright yellow. You really can't miss them, and they don't move fast. So if you're seeing that, it's a safer bet that you're dealing with the Mexican bean beetle than you are with yeah, that's a good strategy too. Thank you.
Great. What are some common pests of kale? Someone has white bugs that look chalky.
White bugs that look chalky. Well, tell you what, let's do an experiment. Okay, plant name. I'm using my own book here, and let's see. The possible culprits for kale, you're going to love this list. There's the cabbage loper, which is like a caterpillar. There's the cabbage worm. We already saw that. We saw cutworm, diamondback caterpillar, flea beetle. None of them sound like, okay, harlequin bug. I bet, well, yeah, white blotches on leaves, wilting leaves, and brown foliage. That's a possibility on the kale, because kale is in the Brassica family. So you would be looking at pests that are likely to be on the Brassica family, and that would be a place where your resource would probably be the University of Maryland, and go and look at the vegetable section and look at kale.
Okay, good suggestion. Yeah, nothing's coming to mind by her description. She was saying white blotches and they kind of burst off like a cloud. Yeah. I do like iNaturalist. You mentioned that as a resource, because you can take a picture of something and then it gives you some potential options. But then when you share it, you also get feedback from other people that either confirm your identification or tell you were so far off. So it's helpful because you have all these, using everyone else's brain.
Yeah, perfect.
I think we've hit all the questions. I just wanted to throw out, while people are still here, that if you have topics, we have next month's topic nailed down, and Erica Smith that Pat had mentioned is speaking on planning for fall. And that's on the 7th. I'll have that posted so you can register in the next week or so. But if there's topics that you would like for these monthly talks, we haven't scheduled all of them yet. It'd be great to put them in the chat, or you can shoot us an email. Yeah, so you can keep these going for the rest of the season. And then last, I did say I would tell you what the insect was that I used to advertise the class. So I don't know if people had guesses. You can put those in the chat. It wasn't one that we covered. I was going to give you all of 3 seconds if anyone wanted to guess. No, I'm getting no activity there. So they were actually no, it was not spider mites. They were the juvenile of the wheel bug, which is actually an assassin bug. So Pat mentioned the assassin bug, and the wheel bug is amazing. If you want to Google it, I didn't have a picture ready, but they're fascinating, and you will never mix them up with anyone else.
Nope.
And they're a predator similar to something like a praying mantis that will just eat anything. They don't care if it's a good bug or a bad bug. They just want to eat. But they're
omnivores.
Yeah, they're not picky. That was, I think, all I had. Pat, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. We
Thank
will
you.
post the recording of the talk as well as your slides, so people will have those as a reference. And that's where you can find previous talks as well. We had the talk you mentioned, Terry Valenti's talk, and we're trying to get them all up. So if you look in the volunteer info section, you'll see them there. All right. Well, thank you so much, and we hope to see you on July 7th for planning for fall.
Thank you all very much.